right, so this is going to be another movie review. This one's called The Lodger, Story of the London Fog, 1927. Giving it 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was all right. It's got some Keystone Cops and some plot twist. Hitchcock, Alfred Hitchcock committed the same framing of an innocent person in many a movie of his. The movie poster looks pretty good. It looks I think Hitchcock tried to make it German expressionist. Because that's what the movie poster looks like, and the movie is kind of German expressionist. That's the only way I can describe it. The Lodger, a story of the London fog. Ivor Novella in The Lodger, a story of the London fog. That's the British theatrical release poster. Looks super cool. The Lodger, a story of the London fog is a 1927 British silent thriller film directed by Alfred Hitchcock and starring Marie Ault, Arthur Chesney, June Tripp, Malcolm Keane, and Ivor Novello. Hitchcock's third feature film. It was released on February 14, 1927 in London, and on June 10, 1928 in New York City. The film is based on the 1913 novel The Lodger by Marie Belloc Lowndes and the play Who Is He? Co-written by Belloc Lowndes. Its plot concerns the hunt for a Jack the Ripper-like serial killer in London. Kind of like Frenzy. The film was Hitchcock's first thriller, and the film established his reputation as a director. Upon its release, the trade journal Bioscope wrote, "It is possible that this film is the finest British production ever made." In strategy for self-publicity, The Lodger saw him make his first cameo appearance in a film where he sat in a newsroom with his back turned. I didn't even recognize him at first, but he's got black hair. During his younger days, I'm trying to delete this off my list so that I can go down the pike later. Should be interesting. A young blonde woman screams she is the 7th victim of a serial killer known as the Avenger, who targets young blonde women on Tuesday evening. You see a common theme here with Hitchcock on blonde women? The main actress is blonde, by the way, but you can't tell because it's a black and white film. Distributed by Wolf and Friedman Film Service, production company Gainsborough Pictures. Release date February 14th, 1927 in the UK. 90 minutes running time, perfect run time. We're talking about the 2012 restoration. Country UK language silent film with English intertitles. A budget of £12,000. That night, blonde model Daisy Bunting is at a fashion show. When she and the other showgirls hear the news, the blonde girls are horrified, hiding their hair with dark wigs or hats. Daisy returns home to her parents, and her policeman sweetheart Joe who have been reading about the crime in the newspaper. A handsome but secretive young man bearing a strong resemblance to the description of the murderer arrives at the Bunting house and he asks about their room for rent. Mrs. Bunting shows him the room, which is decorated with portraits of beautiful young blonde women. He pays her a month rent in advance. The lodger turns all the portraits around to face the wall, and he requests that they be removed. Daisy enters to remove the portraits, and she is attracted to the lodger. The women return downstairs where they hear the lodger's heavy footsteps as he paces the floor. The relationship between Daisy and the reclusive lodger gradually becomes serious, making Joe, who is newly assigned to the Avenger case, unhappy. Mrs. Bunting is awoken late in the night by the lodger leaving the house. She attempts to search his room, but the small cabinet is locked tight. In the morning, another blonde girl is found dead just around the corner. The police observe that the murderers are moving towards the Buntings neighborhood. The Buntings believe that the lodger is the Avenger, and they try to prevent Daisy from spending time with him. The next Tuesday night, Daisy and the lodger sneak away for a late-night date. Joe tracks them down, and Joe confronts them, and Daisy breaks up with him. Joe begins to piece together the events of the previous weeks. Joe convinces himself that the lodger is indeed the Avenger. With the warrant and two fellow officers, Joe returns to search the lodger's room. They find a leather bag containing a gun, a map plotting the location of the murders, newspaper clippings about the attacks, and a photograph of a beautiful blonde woman whom Joe recognizes as the Avenger's first victim. The lodger is arrested despite Daisy's protest, but he manages to run off into the night while handcuffed. Daisy finds him handcuffed, coatless, and shivering. The lodger tells Daisy, "Meet me at the lamppost," and he makes a mad break through the door, a bum rush through the door while he's still handcuffed. He explains that the woman in the photograph was his sister, a beautiful debutante murdered by the Avenger at a dance, and that he had vowed to his dying mother that he would bring the killer to justice. Daisy takes the lodger to a pub. Bad mistake. Daisy gives him brandy to warm him, hiding his handcuffs with a cloak. The suspicious locals pursue him, quickly becoming a mob. The lodger is surrounded. The lodger is beaten off camera, of course, while Daisy and Joe, who have just heard that the real Avenger has been caught, try in vain to defend him. When all seems lost, a paperboy interrupts with the news that the real Avenger has been arrested. The mob releases the lodger, who falls into Daisy's waiting arms. The lodger showcases many of the themes of Hitchcock's previous and future works, according to Philip French, writing in The Guardian. Hitchcock borders themes of the fascination with technique and problem solving, the obsession with blondes, the fear of authority, the ambivalence towards homosexuality in the lodger. Not sure what that last part means, but maybe we'll discover something that I didn't notice. Alfred Hitchcock's cameo occurs when he is sitting at a desk in the newsroom with his back to the camera, and he's operating a telephone 4 minutes 44 seconds into the film. This is Hitchcock's first recognizable film cameo, and it became a standard practice for the remainder of his films. Hitchcock said that his cameo came about because the actor who was supposed to play the part of the telephone operator failed to appear, so Hitchcock filled in for him. Film scholar William Rothman notes that Hitchcock's cameo from behind is shot in a very similar manner to that of the titular lodger. According to some sources, including the French filmmaker Francois Truffaut, Hitchcock makes another cameo at the very end of the film in The Angry Mob, but this has been disputed. The Lodger is based on the novel of the same name by Marie Bullock Lawns about the Jack the Ripper murders, as well as the play Who Is He?, a comic stage adaptation of the novel by Horace Eddisley Vatchel that Hitchcock saw in 1915. News of the film was announced by the British press at the start of 1926, and Ivor Novello was announced as the lead in February. Originally, the film was to end with ambiguity as to the lodger's innocence. However, when Novello was cast, the studio demanded alterations to the script, and Hitchcock recalled they wouldn't let Novello even be considered as a villain. The publicity angle carried the day, and we had to change the script to show that without a doubt he was innocent. In recollections such as these, Hitchcock presented himself as been dissatisfied, but in fact, Who Is He? Has a similar happy ending. Filming began on February 25th, 1926, and principal photography was completed within 6 weeks. Because Hitchcock practiced film methods that mirrored those of German Expressionism, scenes would not run for much longer than 3 minutes each. According to Tripp, fresh from Berlin, Hitch was so imbued with the value of unusual camera angles and lighting effects with which to create and sustain dramatic suspense that often a scene which would not run for more than 3 minutes on the screen would take a morning to shoot. Tripp had recently undergone an operation at the start of the shoot. She wrote in her autobiography that as a result of Hitchcock making her perform repeated takes of one scene, she felt a sickening pain somewhere in the region of my appendix scar, and she had to return to the hospital. In framing the shots, Hitchcock was heavily influenced by post-war horror, social unrest, and the emotional fear of abnormality and madness. This film is entirely silent, but words were not necessary given the visual method of storytelling. A memorable scene occurs when the Buntings look up at the kitchen ceiling, listening to the lodger pacing above. The ceiling then becomes transparent, and the lodger is seen walking on it. A thick sheet of toughened glass was used. According to the Criterion Collection review by Philip Kent, this scene was composed of 65 shots in just over 6 minutes with no title cards to interrupt, some disconcerting camera angles, including one straight down the staircase as we see the lodger's disembodied hand sliding down the banister. Early in the film, the lodger's room is shown filled with paintings by Edward Burne-Jones of nude blonde women who resemble the Avengers victims, but among them is a painting of St. George freeing a woman from being sacrificed. This may be Hitchcock's use of foreshadowing to suggest that the lodger is not the actual killer. Upon Hitchcock's finished film, producer Michael Bolton was reportedly furious and nearly shelved it. After considerable argument, a compromise was reached, and film critic Ivor Montagu was hired to salvage the film. Hitchcock was initially resentful of the intrusion, but Montagu recognized the director's technical skill and artistry, and Montagu made only minor suggestions, mostly concerning the title cards and the reshooting of a few minor scenes. Hitchcock scholar Donald Spato, who had not viewed the director's earlier two films, described The Lodger as the first time Hitchcock had revealed his psychological attraction to the association between sex and murder. between ecstasy and death. Spotto also stated Montague's claim that Hitchcock's edit contained up to 500 intertitles seems likely an exaggeration, but he worked with the director during the summer months to tighten up the film. One of the other improvements was to hire U.S. poster artist Edward McKnight Kauffer to design the animated triangular title cards. Now, those are kind of interesting, a little distracting in my view. A successful trade screening of the re-edited film overcame Wolf's prior objections, and its theatrical success allowed for the British release of Hitchcock's prior film, The Mountain Eagle. Upon release, the film was a critical and commercial success. In a review of the film in the British trade journal Bioscope, it was called the finest British production ever made. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of a whopping 96% based on 25 reviews, with an average rating of 7.7 out of 10. The Lodger continued themes that would run through much of Hitchcock's later work, such as that of an innocent man on the run for a crime that he did not commit. Hitchcock had reportedly studied contemporary films by Murnau and Lang, whose influence may have been in the ominous camera angles and claustrophobic lighting. While Hitchcock had made two previous films, in latter years the director would refer to The Lodger as the first true Hitchcock film. Beginning with The Lodger, Hitchcock helped shape the modern-day thriller genre and film. After arriving in the United States in 1940, Hitchcock was involved with a radio adoption of the film with Herbert Marshall, Edwin Gwen, and Lorraine Tuttle. In its review of the adoption, Variety wrote, Hitchcock is a director with an exceptionally acute ear. He achieves his result by a ravel-like rhythmic pummeling of the nervous system, music, sound effects, the various equivalent of squeaking shoes, deep breathing, disembodied voices are mingled in the telling of the tale with a mounting accumulation of small descriptive touches that pyramid the tension. The adaptation preserves the original novel's ending rather than that of the film, and does not resolve the question of the lodger's identity as the killer. In early 1942, the Los Angeles Times reported that Hitchcock was considering a color remake of The Lodger following the completion of Saboteur in 1942, but he was unable to obtain the film rights. In 2014, the Dallas Chamber Symphony commissioned an original film score for The Lodger from composer Douglas Pipes. The score premiered at a concert screening of the film on October 8, 2014, at Moody Performance Hall with Richard McKay conducting. The Lodger has been considered by some film critics to be Hitchcock's greatest silent film. In commemoration of the 100th anniversary of Hitchcock's birth, an orchestral soundtrack was composed by Ashley Irwin. The recording of the Duchess Filmochester Babelsberg was broadcast over the Arte TV network in Europe on August 13, 1999. Its first live performance occurred on September 29, 2000 in the Nikolaivsaal in Potsdam by the Duchess Filmchester Babelsberg under the direction of Scott Lawton. Following several previous restorations, a newly tinted digital restoration of The Lodger was completed in 2012 as part of the BFI's £2 million Save the Hitchcock 9 project to restore Hitchcock's surviving silent films. The Lodger has been heavily bootlegged on home video. I got it for free on YouTube. However, various licensed restored releases have appeared on DVD, Blu-ray, and video-on-demand services. worldwide from Network Distributing in the UK, MGM, and Criterion in the US, and others. At the end of 2022, the lodger entered the public domain in the United States. And that's why I got to watch it for free on YouTube's. Nobody in the chat room. Sorry to have taken so long to get to these reviews this weekend. Last night I didn't feel like watching The Lodger, A Story of the London Fog. I just wanted to take a little nappy poo. And I ended up getting up early, but then I got a text message from my allergist. And I started freaking out, and I said, "Oh, the appointment's today." It wasn't today. The appointment was for June 6th. Or is it June 7th? I guess it's June 7th. But they gave me an appointment with the flat-chested Chinese PA. After I got done talking to the comely young flat-chested secretary, started to get a little too excited, dirty old man. And then I had to get breakfast because I had to eat breakfast. I was dilly-dallying all morning before I went to the allergist. So I went to Noah's Bagel. My credit card is almost completely maxed out. That bagel filled me up till about 2 o'clock when I had a dentist appointment. But before that, I had to go to Safeway and pick up my allergy medicine. And then I just wanted to take another nap. So I've been lazy this weekend, taking naps and running unnecessary running unnecessary errands. But at least next week, I don't have anything on my calendar for Saturday, which is good. I can catch up on my movies list. All right. The Lodger, A Story of London Fog, 1927, 1 hour, 32 minutes. It gets a whopping 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb. 14,000 ratings. That's amazing for a silent film. A landlady suspects that her new lodger is the madman killing women in London. All right, more like this. Blackmail, Downhill, The Pleasure Garden, and Sabotage. For the opening of this movie, Sir Alfred Hitchcock wanted to show the Avengers murder victim being dragged out of the Thames River at night with the Charing Cross Bridge in the background, but Scotland Yard refused his request to film at the bridge. Hitchcock repeated his request several times until Scotland Yard notified him that they would look the other way if he could do the filming in one night. Hitchcock quickly sent his cameras and actors out to Charing Cross Bridge to film the scene, but when the rushes came back from the developers, the scene at the bridge was nowhere to be found. Hitchcock and his assistants searched through the prints, but could not find it. Finally, Hitchcock discovered that his cameraman had forgotten to put the lens on the camera before filming the night scene. Interesting. A serial killer known as the Avenger is on the loose in London, murdering blonde women. A mysterious man arrives at home of Mr. and Mrs. Bunting looking for a room to rent. The Bunting's daughter is a blonde model who is seeing one of the detectives assigned to the case. The detective becomes jealous of the lodger. The detective begins to suspect that he might be the Avenger. That's the storyline from Colonel Needham, Colonel at imdb.com, COL at imdb.com. When the lodger, Ivor Novella, and Daisy June Tripp are playing chess, but the board is set up inappropriately. The square in the right corner should always be white. In this case, the bottom right square is dark black. This is the most obvious when the lodger, Ivor Novella, is poking the coals in the fireplace. Quotes from Joe Betts. Does this lodger of yours mean any harm to Daisy? The landlady. Don't be silly, Joe. He's not that sort. Even if he's a bit queer, he's a gentleman. Closing credits. Thank you to everyone who supported the BFI's Silent Hitchcock restoration project. The original version of The Lodger, directed by Alfred Hitchcock in 1926, was restored in 1999 in honor of the director's 100th anniversary. The film was restored by the British National Film and TV Archives, and a new score by Ashley Irwin was commissioned by ZDF ARTE Germany, and it premiered on August 13, 1999, which would have been Hitchcock's 100th birthday. This was edited into Histories du Cinéma, une vague nouvelle, 1999, which I have reviewed, by the way. Release date, February 14, 1927 in the UK. Country of origin, UK. Language, none. Also known as The Lodger. Filming locations, Victoria Embankment, Westminster, London, England, UK. Production companies Gainsborough Pictures and Carlisle Blackwell Productions. Budget of £12,000, gross worldwide of $83,568. Not a bad return on investment for 1927. Runtime 1 hour 32 minutes. Color black and white. Sound mix silent. Aspect ratio 1.33 to 1. Still nobody in the chat room. All right. Here's a review from MR17. There's no rating on it, but it says, "The real Hitchcock is born." That's the title of MR17's IMDb review. This is the first real Hitchcock movie, the one in which he really starts to use all of his abilities, although we can see that they are still not mature yet. It is very interesting because he makes a lot of experiments in this film, like the glass ceiling, and we see how hard he wanted at that time to really make his mark. To stand above the rest, although the ending is not very good. The first 20 minutes of The Lodger are impressive, with Hitchcock slowly testing us visually, of course, about the killer and his particularities until the arrival of Ivor Novello, a must-see picture to any real Hitchcock fan. That's from Mr. 17, October 14th, 1998. So that was before the restoration. this review. All right, I think I touched on most of the aspects of this early Hitchcock film. It's not a great film by any means, but I suppose it's one of the better silent films. I've seen some lesser quality silent films in my day. So, from a silent film standpoint, it's quite a remarkable achievement for Hitchcock's only third film, his first feature film. All right, moving down my movies list, I've got Footprints of God with Stephen Ray, 2020. That's first on my list. Second on my list is Fear in the Night, 1946. And then third on the list is Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny, 1972. So I'll try to get through Footprints of God with Stephen Ray today. And then hopefully I can get through Fear in the Night, 1946, on Monday night. We'll see how that goes. Laters.